India and South Africa both have been hit hard by Trump's tariffs. South Africa faces a 30% duty, the highest in Africa, and India faces 50%, the highest in the world. So naturally, the two are now looking to deepen their economic ties. A South African trade delegation is set to arrive in India next week. It will be led by Trade and Industry Minister Parks Tau, at the invitation of India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal.
Do you know what scares Washington the most? It isn't missiles, it isn't armies, it's gold, real, physical gold, slipping out of America's grip and into the hands of nations bold enough to challenge the dollar. And right now, halfway across the world, two unlikely partners are doing exactly that. South Africa and India, two countries separated by oceans but united by ambition, have quietly been working on a gold-backed currency deal that could reshape global power forever. A deal so secret, so disruptive, that Washington is watching in panic. For decades, the US dollar has been the king of global trade: oil, gas, food, minerals, all priced in dollars. Whoever controls the dollar controls the world. But that dominance is cracking, and in 2025, a surprising alliance between Pretoria and New Delhi may deliver the biggest blow yet. But how did this happen? Why gold? And why South Africa and India, of all nations? The story begins in the mines of Johannesburg, the heart of Africa's gold supply. For years, South Africa's gold was shipped straight to London and New York, feeding Western banks and filling vaults in places far from Africa itself. But after years of sanctions, resource exploitation, and broken promises, South Africa's new leadership began asking, why not use gold for Africa itself? Why not weaponize it? India, on the other hand, has always been obsessed with gold. Not just for culture, not just for weddings, but for economics. India imports more gold than almost any other nation on earth. And now, as the world shifts into multipolar chaos, New Delhi sees gold not as jewelry, but as a shield against the dollar trap. So in late 2024, behind closed doors in Johannesburg, a series of meetings took place between Indian financial envoys and South African trade officials. On paper, it was just currency cooperation. In reality, it was a blueprint to create a gold-backed settlement mechanism between the two nations, allowing trade to bypass the US dollar entirely. If it works, Indian companies could buy South African gold, coal, and minerals using a digital currency backed not by promises, but by gold reserves. South Africa could then use that same system to buy Indian pharmaceuticals, IT services, and military equipment. No dollars, no SWIFT, no US banks taking a cut. Washington calls this a nightmare, because once gold-backed trade gains traction, the dollar begins to lose its magic. And if South Africa, the continent's biggest gold producer, and India, the world's hungriest gold consumer, succeed, others will follow. Think about it: Nigeria with its oil, Egypt with its Suez trade, even Brazil with its agriculture. What happens if they all start settling in gold-linked currencies instead of the dollar? The US isn't sitting still. Already, American officials have been pressing both Pretoria and New Delhi. Diplomats warn of economic instability. Analysts hint at sanctions. But the more Washington pushes, the more determined South Africa and India seem to become. This isn't just about money. This is about sovereignty. South Africa's president has openly criticized dollar colonialism. India's strategists know that whoever escapes dollar dependence first wins the next century. Together, they are crafting an alternative, a currency with real value, a currency that Washington cannot simply print out of thin air. Of course, the risks are massive. Gold is powerful, but it is heavy, slow, and vulnerable. Storing it, moving it, securing it, that's no small task. But both countries are experimenting with something revolutionary: a digital gold token pegged directly to vaults in Johannesburg and Mumbai. Imagine a blockchain system where every token equals a gram of gold, transferable instantly across borders. If this works, it's game over for dollar dominance in parts of Africa and Asia. But here's the twist: Washington isn't just worried about economics, it's worried about influence. The dollar has always been America's greatest weapon. Through it, Washington could freeze assets, sanction governments, and dictate who trades with who. Remove the dollar, and suddenly that weapon disappears. So what happens when South Africa and India put their gold deal into action? Already, murmurs suggest pilot projects are running. Some Indian importers are quietly paying in rupees, converted into gold-backed notes, while South African banks are testing clearing systems outside of SWIFT. And behind it all, China is watching closely. Beijing has long wanted a gold-backed trade currency, but every attempt has been met with suspicion. Now, with India and South Africa Leading the charge, China sees an opening. If the system survives U.S. pressure, Beijing could plug its own trade into it, supercharging BRICS into a true economic bloc. But make no mistake, Washington will fight back. We've seen it before in Libya, where Muammar Gaddafi proposed a gold-backed African dinar. Within a year, NATO bombs fell, and Gaddafi was gone. Many argue it wasn't just politics, it was about protecting the dollar. Now history threatens to repeat. South Africa and India may not face bombs, but the pressure will be immense: sanctions, trade restrictions, political smear campaigns, even covert destabilization. And yet, the momentum is different this time. The global south is rising, BRICS is expanding, the dollar is weakening under debt, inflation, and political chaos in Washington itself. The world is ready for something new. So, is the South Africa-India gold currency deal just a fantasy? Or is it the first crack in the dollar empire? What we know is this: gold has always been the foundation of trust. Nations may lie, currencies may collapse, but gold endures. And for South Africa and India, that may be the weapon they need to finally stand against the West. The US dollar was built on power, but power is shifting. And sometimes all it takes is two nations, one resource, and the courage to say, enough. This is not just about South Africa, it's not just about India, it's about the future of money itself. And if Washington is truly furious, maybe that tells us all we need to know: that this gold deal is real, dangerous, and unstoppable. Because, in the end, empires don't collapse when armies fail, they collapse when money fails. And right now, the gold of Johannesburg, linked with the ambitions of New Delhi, may be writing the first chapter of the post-dollar world.
But here's where the story takes an even stranger turn. Leaked cables from Pretoria suggest that the first real transaction using this gold-backed settlement system already happened. It wasn't oil, it wasn't coal, it was vaccines. In January 2025, a South African shipment of vaccines from an Indian pharmaceutical giant was reportedly paid for not in dollars, not in rupees, but in a test run of the new digital gold token. Only a handful of officials knew. Yet, the moment that transaction cleared, whispers began spreading across financial circles in London and Washington. Imagine the symbolism: life-saving medicine delivered, not under the dollar system, but through a parallel currency built on gold. Washington suddenly realized this wasn't theory anymore. It was happening. Behind closed doors, U.S. Treasury officials began hosting emergency calls with allies. One memo, obtained by investigative journalists, warned that India and South Africa are testing a settlement protocol designed to reduce exposure to the U.S. financial system. If replicated, this could weaken the dollar's utility across Africa within 5 years. That sentence alone terrified Washington. Because if Africa begins bypassing the dollar, the ripple spreads far beyond the continent. Europe, Latin America, Asia, they all watch for who dares move first. Meanwhile, South African state television ran a quiet but symbolic segment showing gold bars being audited in Johannesburg. To most viewers, it was just another news item. But for those who understood, it was a message. Our gold is here, it's real, and we're backing our currency with it. India too is playing a careful balancing act. Officially, New Delhi denies any new currency plan, but unofficially, Indian financial think tanks have begun releasing papers describing alternative settlement tools for emerging economies. One such paper, published in February 2025, mentions direct gold-anchored clearing between strategic partners. Notice how they never name South Africa directly, but the hint is obvious. Washington, meanwhile, isn't relying only on diplomacy. Intelligence chatter suggests the U.S. has increased funding for monitoring African financial networks, looking for any trace of illicit or destabilizing gold flows. Think about that. Gold, the oldest form of money, is now treated almost like contraband by the world's biggest superpower. But here's the bigger question: will other African nations follow? In Abuja, Nigerian officials have already voiced interest in exploring alternative trade settlement with India. In Cairo, Egypt is reportedly studying gold-backed settlement for Suez Canal trade fees. Even smaller nations like Tanzania are watching, hoping to reduce their reliance on volatile dollar markets. For Washington, this is more than economics. It's about control slipping away. Once the dollar loses its exclusivity, America loses leverage. No more sanctions chokehold, no more dictating terms of trade. And for countries like South Africa and India, that's precisely the point. Still, the gold deal isn't bulletproof. There are dangers. Gold reserves can be stolen, manipulated, even faked. A single scandal, say, a vault found empty or a shipment hijacked, could destroy confidence overnight, and Washington knows this. That's why many insiders believe the US may not confront the deal directly, but instead, try to destabilize it from the shadows. And here lies the tension. South Africa and India are not just building a financial system, they are building a test of resilience. Can their alliance survive the pressure that toppled Gaddafi's golden our dream? Can they withstand financial sabotage, media attacks, even covert operations aimed at derailing their currency project? If they can, history may look back at 2025 as the year when two nations quietly cracked open the door to a post-dollar world, a door others may soon walk through, and maybe that's why Washington is so furious. Because for the first time it isn't China leading this challenge, it isn't Russia, it's South Africa, a country long dismissed as peripheral, and India, a supposed US ally. Together, they are proving that even without a superpower's military might, money, real money, gold-backed money can still shake the empire to its core. The gold bars are real, the transactions are happening, and Washington's fury may be the clearest proof of all. That the future is no longer theirs to control.